Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today. Normally, we're overachievers, and we're doing the show a day early. This week, underachievers. I was stuck in Vegas, no internet, had to wait a day. We weren't going to give you an inferior product. It may come late, but it is still grade A fine ass.
You know, I'm not always there when you call, but I'm always on time. All right. The last 2 weeks, we were a little early. Today, we're a little tardy, but that's fine.
Tardy to the party, but we're here regardless.
I don't feel tardy.
God doesn't give with both hands. 72, since we're a day late, 72 days until week 1.
We are the twos away.
Starting to knock on the door.
What I tell you, man, every week it's like a big chunk is taken away.
Yep. It's going to be a bummer when we get to like 2 weeks from now when we don't lose a whole 10. You know what I mean?
It'll be like
we were in the 80s. Now we're in the 70s. Next show, we're going to be in the 60s. But then we're going to have to do back-to-back 40s at one point, and it's going to be
back-to-back 50s.
Back-to-back 50s?
Because it'll be 67 next week when we do it on the right day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 67, and then it'll be 67, then 60. And then 250s too. No, 150.
Well, if it's 72, the math is hard. At some point, it's going to be in the same decade, and it's going to feel long.
I don't know what I'm talking about, but
that's what we don't math around here.
No, not really.
So we've been there's been a lot of reasons to not be too high on this franchise for this last offseason, the last 20 seasons. We've been around a long time. We've seen some heartache. We've shared that together, Windbags. We have shared this heartache. We shared and made the great times taste that much sweeter, and the dead times. We've been pretty negative on here. And in fairness to us, there's been a lot of good reasons to be negative.
I wouldn't say we're necessarily being wrong with the negativity.
We're being realists, I think, is what we've been doing. And so we finally said, fuck it. Football's supposed to be fun. Watching Raider football is fun. Talking Raider football with your boys is fun. So we're going to give you the top. We have all of this next season to be realists. Today, optimists. That glass isn't half full. That glass is overloaded with the silver and black, and we're putting it into a beer bong and chugging it. We are doing keg stands with the glass. It's so damn full.
Those cups overflow with like the cups at the Cheetah 1 through 5.
That's what we're gurgling today. So here's top 5 reasons to be optimistic. Top 5 reasons for optimism this upcoming season. First one. I always like to start with the math. You know what I mean? Here's something concrete, right? You can argue with me. Can't argue with math.
Nope. Right? And we didn't do the math because we just said earlier we don't math very well. But someone very smart did, and it makes sense.
I can copy and paste the math with the best of them.
Like a motherfucker.
So, one-score games is one of the most random metrics for success in football. Now, there is definitely something to say about a team that is clutch. There is a level to that, right? Coaches don't blow it late in games, good goal line defense, clutch quarterback play, execution, great kicking game. There's a lot of pieces that help you win close games that are completely in your control. But so many writers, specifically, I highly recommend, again, my favorite writer at ESPN for football, Bill Barnwell, has done extensive work on how one-score games, when your team leans on winning one-score games, that's generally not something they keep for a long time. In fact, they almost never do. So if you win a lot of close games and you have a great season one year, you almost always falter the next as the number regresses back to the mean, and vice versa. If you lose a ton of one-score games, a ton of really close games one season, you almost always, statistically, win more one-score games. It's more about luck than it is about what you're actually doing. Now, that what you're doing doesn't matter, but statistically, luck has been a bigger factor. Why is that good for the Raiders? This reason. In 2021, 2 seasons ago, when we were 10-7, we were clutch, man. 7-2 in 1-score games, in 7-point games. Even better if we counted 8-point games, but we're just going to use 7, right? 10-7, 7-2 in 1-score games. What happened last season? We regressed to the mean. We were 6-11 as a team, 3-9 in 1-score games. Why is that a good thing? Because next season, we should bounce back the other way. Statistically, you're supposed to be around 500, right? That's not something that normally teams fail at consistently, being bad and losing 1-score games. Mathematically and historically, that's just not the case. So while we were terrible 1-score games, and I'm not saying we shouldn't point the finger at people who failed in those 1-score games, because there's still execution and people didn't do their jobs, that still needs to be worked on. Mm-hmm. But mathematically, it should go the other way next season.
Yeah, you see, 2 seasons ago was the Lions. The Lions lost a lot of 1-score games, and last year they won their last 8. Mm-hmm. They had the kind of that same thing, but in the same season. The first part of the season last year, they lost a lot of 1-score games. Then they went and ripped off 8 in a row. Look for the freaking Vikings. Maybe not so much this next year coming up. They won 12 games last year, and most of them were nail biters all the way to the end. When you have a defense that doesn't stop other teams from scoring, it's very difficult to be that way consistently year in and year out. They didn't seem like they did a lot defensively. So there's just some examples of what's happened around the league where this has happened to other teams.
Reason number 2. We have arguably, going into next season, 4 players that are arguably the best at their position. 4.
It's hard to believe, but yeah, it's legit.
That's a lot. 4 players where you could, who were all clearly at least top 3 last season and could make the case that they're number 1 next season. Very realistically, we're not dreaming here. 4 players can make the case of the best in football at their position. Davante Adams at receiver, Maxx Crosby at end, Josh Jacobs at running back, Daniel Carlson kicker. And not only that, but those are receiver and D end are the second and third most important positions in football, right? Outside of quarterback, those are running back. Oh man, you don't pay. Not that the running back position isn't important. It's just you can find cheap alternatives. So don't take our argument that, paying Josh Jacobs isn't wise with money and make that sound like running back isn't important. Running back is important, but you can get great production cheap. Those are 2 different arguments, 2 very different arguments. And then Carlson, Captain Clutch.
If you have a good kicker, man, he erases a lot of bad.
We luckily, as a team, we've been through some hard things. We have forgotten what life is like when your kicker blows because we've had it so good for so long, and that is so big for a team.
Yeah, it's comforting to be comfortable.
Yeah.
All right, cool. You know what? We're going to get 3 out of this shit. Mm-hmm. All right. You have a 13-point lead and you get the ball down to the 35. Oh yeah, that's 52. He'll get that. No problem. Yeah, he's good.
Automatic from 50. Our kicker, Daniel Carlson. And also, Maxx Crosby's only getting better. We'll get to the pass rush a little bit, but he should have some more help this season than he did last season, right? Davante Adams is going to have to make some adjustments, right? Brand new quarterback, but at least one more year familiar with the scheme. Chip on his shoulder, dude. I mean, Davante's got a chip on his shoulder after everything that's happened with this team, and he seems like one of those guys I'd hate to play against when he's mad. You know what I mean? I'd hate to be a corner lined up to a pissed off Davante Adams.
Honestly, man, I don't see the change at quarterback making a huge difference for those elite receivers because we saw it last year. I mean, I couldn't really appreciate how open he gets and how quickly he gets that open. It almost seems like he doesn't get off the snap really quickly. Because he's just kind of and then he makes a quick little move, and the corner's just like, and just falls over, like it's totally out of position, and he's wide open.
He's like a prime Allen Iverson, just like
it's just
breaking
weird
ankles.
How he doesn't move really fast, but everything he does is like on point, on balance, on time, and he gets wide open. And even when he's not wide open, he can still go and get him with the best of them.
And Josh Jacobs, I mean, let's say we just do the franchise tagging, we just do the 1 year. That's when he plays his best. Contract years is when he goes hog wild, like he did this last season, right?
Yeah.
We could have easily, not easily, but very, like it's very real possibility that all 4 of those guys could be the best in the position next season. Reason number 3, pass rush should be drastically improved. Chandler Jones was starting to gain momentum a little bit last season. Hopefully that continues. Very realistically could continue next season. Maxx Crosby is Maxx effing Crosby. Mm-hmm. And Tyree Wilson is our first round pick, athletic freak. We now have 3 defensive ends, all top tier at something, right? Maxx Crosby's got the motor. Tyree Wilson's the rookie athletic freak. Chandler Jones has the experience. Those 3 combined should turn into a good pass. Not a better pass rush, not an average pass rush, a good pass rush.
Yeah.
And that's assuming the defensive tackles don't, even with the defensive tackles haven't really gotten better, even they can improve there too. Like the Raiders can still improve at D tackle and help things even more. Just those 3 guys. It should be a good pass rush.
Yeah, I mean, look, Chandler Jones towards the end of the year last year, he did Chandler Jones things. He forced fumbles, he recovered fumbles, he scored touchdowns, he got more pressures, he got sacks. Like that's what he does. And we talked about this before the beginning of the season, last season. Is he's a game wrecker. He will just wreck a game by himself, what he does specifically. Towards the end of the year, he did that. He had the sacks. He covered 2 fumbles. One of them he returned for a touchdown to seal the game. So those are the
Jones's head.
Yeah, those are the types of things he does, man. Those are the types of things he can do. He's lighter now, which I've always felt that there's a couple of positions on the field that as you get older, you need to lose a little bit of weight every single season. Once you become like a veteran running back,
civilians. You know how we get fatter as we get older?
No. And they need to lose weight. Defensive end, if you're a speed guy on defensive end, you need to lose weight a little bit. Just like running back, just 3 to 5 pounds a season. I think the first guy I actually heard talk about that was an old running back called Deuce McAllister. And he would lose like 3 to 5 pounds every offseason once he hit 5 years. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I just need to keep that quickness, keep that bounce. Boom,
Ray Lewis said that at linebacker.
Yeah, I need to lose a little bit of weight every season, just a little bit of edge, so I don't like. So him coming in at 250, he looks really skinny, but like, dude, he's 250 and he's tall and he still beat the shit out of all of us. But dude, Tyree Wilson, they took a picture with all the rookies next to one another. He looks like he's made from like they had extra left over when they were making the other guys, so they just gave the extra to Tyree Wilson, like in the movie Twins when like Arnold Schwarzenegger got all the good shit and Danny DeVito was just a leftover crap, right? No, it's like he got extra shit.
Like you're making a family of Play-Doh and you use the extra to make dad, and dad's like 7 feet tall.
He's just huge, man. He's huge, and if he's huge and what showed on the screen in his college tape translates well to the NFL, it's going to be tough to block our front 4.
And a great pass rush can cover up a lot of warts on a bad defense, right? Like it is the foundation for, I mean, obviously every piece helps each other, right? Great defensive backs give your ends time to get sacks, great defensive tackles, free up, cover up blockers. So your linebackers can tackle. That's all a thing. But if you had to build one foundational unit on your defense, it's the pass rush. Because that just helps everybody else. It can give all these young, at this point, poor DBs a chance to be better. Rush that quarterback. Reason number 4, improve targets. I didn't think that would be a thing that we'd have to improve last season. But with losing Darren Waller, like we should have, Hunter Renfrow being concussed most of the season, which should be a marked improvement of last season. Davante's going to be Davante. Hunter Renfrow should be healthy if the Zebras stop allowing them to go American Gladiators on him every single play. A stud new running back, and Jacoby, who knows the system and was very underrated with the Patriots.
Yeah, he was definitely underused with the Patriots. I think he's going to be it's going to fit a nice role with us. He's head and shoulders better than any number 2 receiver. I mean, outside receiver that we had last season. And my Mayer coming in, I'm not saying that he's a better tight end than Waller, but I think that he can produce better than what Waller gave us last season.
His availability should be much higher.
Let's hope so, man.
That matters. And along those same lines, number 5, a quarterback that's familiar with the system. Every new system Derek Carr was in, the first year, struggled. This year was no different. Well, it was different because it was that, and worse so. We're not going to rehash whose fault is it. Is it McDaniel's fault? Is it Carr's fault? The point is the two together, we can all agree, is a match made in hell. And with Jimmy G, we know he knows the system. We know he's embraced it. We know he can work with Josh McDaniels. Done deal. So the overall foundation and philosophy of at least at minimum stability of a passing offense is there.
Yeah, one of the things that we've heard recently is that our old quarterback didn't give 100%, or we didn't get 100% of him. Maybe that could have been because off-field distractions. Maybe it could be because he didn't buy in 100% to the philosophy of what the offense wanted or offense needed, or what Coach McDaniels needed or wanted. We know that's not going to be a problem with the quarterbacks that we have now, especially, as of right now, the 1 and 2 quarterbacks are very familiar with not just the plays themselves, but the philosophy of the offense and what he wants to get done. What Josh McDaniels wants to get done in the offense. So it's not going to be competing philosophies and competing ways of thought when it comes to running this offense. It's, I know what this offense needs to do. I know what the scheme calls for and how I should play in the scheme. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of confusion there.
So this is the 5 reasons for optimism next season. 1-score games go back our way. Arguably the 4 best players, or the best player for different positions. Pass rush improvement, target improvement, familiarity and philosophy with the new quarterback. So those are 5 reasons. And because we're a day late, let's throw it a bonus. And they get a bonus.
You think we should do one more?
And they get a bonus. And they get a bonus.
Yeah.
Leadership. Davante's the leader of the offense. Maxx Crosby's the leader of the defense. 2 leaders by example, right? There's the Ray Lewis, like rah-rah type leaders. And then there's just like, I'm doing my job and I have the utmost respect of everyone around me and I'm going to outwork everybody. No longer an issue, or should no longer be an issue with this franchise. Both sides of the ball.
Yeah, those 2 guys balled out last year. They had great seasons. We know from what we've heard, everything that we know and what we've heard is when the season starts, everyone's like, all right, let's go on board, same side of the rope. Let's go. Let's do it. So it just makes everything a lot easier when you have this one guy to look at and he produces. I think that with a lot of the good things that we had in our quarterback last year, definitely leadership is one of them. But there's an issue, and AJ Hawk said this, when someone's the leader and they're not producing, it can get a little sticky. Mm-hmm. I don't see Davante Adams not producing. I don't see Maxx Crosby on the defensive side not producing. So I do see the 2 leaders on either side who are top producers, who had excellent seasons last year, who guys are going to follow on that side of the ball.
So that's 5 plus a bonus because we spoil you kids. We're into that. Well, one of those big reasons, Josh Jacobs. So as the conversation around what's going to happen with him rages on, and we still don't know, does he sign the tender, play for 1 year, $10 million? Do they come to a deal? Do they sign and trade him? Does he sit out? These are all still options floating around.
All of them are options right now. I don't foresee him giving up $10 million, but we'll see.
And as we get closer to training camp, which is less than a month away, I think it's July 25th. Veterans have to report, so less than a month away. All the other possibilities become increasingly more possible. A month ago, we're like, he'll sign it, we'll be fine. A month in, maybe we're not 100% as sure as we were a month ago. And so as the theories and thought processes of Josh Jacobs, you kind of look into where does he stand historically? Where does he stand with players now? We've been comparing him to Barkley and Pollard because of the other guys signing franchise tags. What about all time? Again, we make it sound like we're dumping on Jacobs. That's not what we're trying to do here. This is an economic question, not a skill question. This is how good he is. I have up here a graphic for those on pod that can't see on YouTube. Most scrimmage yards before turning 25. Barry Sanders, just short of 7,000. Emmitt Smith, 30 yards under that. Edgerrin James, 6,600. Walter Payton, 6,400. Ladanian Tomlinson, 6,100. Marshall Faulk, 5,897. Josh Jacobs, 5,892. He has the seventh most scrimmage yards in NFL history before turning 25. And do you know what those other 6 players all have in common, Soto?
What's that, sir?
Hall of Famers.
Oh, wow.
He is just barely shy of those 6 Hall of Famers. Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, Edgerrin James, Walter Payton, Ladanian Tomlinson, Marshall Faulk. So does that change the conversation at all, putting historical context into what he's been able to do in his first 4 seasons?
It makes it more difficult, but this argument doesn't change the landscape of the NFL right now. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change the landscape of how winning is done in the NFL right now. And am I willing to concede a little bit more, in my mind, a little bit more cap room or cap space because of this? Yeah. I'm saying, okay, you know what? I knew he was good. I never said he was bad. I never thought he was average. I always thought he was a good player. Mm-hmm. Now I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's a very good player. Do I want to break the bank for him? No, I still don't want to do that, but I'm willing to give him a little bit more. Right?
So does your Cats, clearly. Yeah.
That's Apollo. He wants to give him a little bit more. I'm going to give him a little bit more than what I had said in the past.
The economics of football are still the same, and they were obviously very different back then, right? Like Walter Payton just like single-handedly running the rock and getting the Bears W's, right? Ladanian Tomlinson, a piece of a really good offense, catching the ball a little bit more. Emmitt Smith had one of the most legendary lines of the 90s he was running behind for why, he was getting those great numbers. I did not put him in this class, Josh Jacobs. Now, scrimmage yards can be a little misrepresented because Walter Payton wasn't catching the ball. Emmitt Smith and Barry Sanders, not quite as much as a modern offense, right? Ladanian Tomlinson, I think, was, because he's the youngest one of the 7.
Edgerrin James, Tomlinson, and Marshall Faulk caught a ton of balls.
Yep. So that's another part of it too, is football has changed over time. But to me, it's incredible what he's done. It's just not viable when you can get 85% of Josh Jacobs' production for 15% of the money. That's what it comes down to.
That's the hard part, man. Look, this is what I don't want to happen for Josh Jacobs. This is what I don't want to have happen. I don't want him to dig in his heels and say, no, I'm not going to sign this franchise tag. And every week he loses almost $600,000 from that $10.1 million on the tag, right? Because he doesn't get paid that.
Games.
Yeah, because that's what it comes out to about a game. Like almost $600,000 a game. is what he would get paid.
He loses a 3-bed, 2-bathroom house in Lakewood every time.
Every freaking game. Yeah. So it's like, if he doesn't play and we see something somewhat similar in Zeus White, they're not going to pay him at all. The only way that he comes out winning in this scenario is if we cannot move the ball on the ground whatsoever at all. Then we're like, look, man, yeah, maybe we do need him that much. And then maybe this will work in his favor. But I don't see that happening, man.
And that's the struggle that runs into every single time I'm hearing, pro Josh Jacobs people. And I hate saying that because I don't want to sound like a con Josh Jacobs person. That's not us.
Let's say the pro break the bank.
Pro Josh Jacobs, right? That's
more accurate.
They say stuff like this, right? We're not arguing that Josh Jacobs isn't good. We're not arguing that in a different, if the landscape of the economics of football were different, he would get more. We're not saying he's not good. So you keep putting him in context of how good he is. Like, yeah, he's awesome. He's great. No argument here.
None.
But until I see something that says for what he's asking for, you're getting so much more than what you can get with paying somebody less, then it's all mute. Then it doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter, like, how good you put him in context. If you can say rationally, like, yeah, we can get 85% as much production with, a running back that's 20% less. Like, it's just basic economics of football, especially one with so much money on offense, and especially one with a defense with giant holes in it. You got to pick your battles.
It's just really difficult right now to be able to build a defense the way that I'm thinking that this regime wants to build its defense when you're spending that much money on offense. I mean, even though he's not getting paid a ton of money, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a freaking bargain. He's making a good amount of money. You have that. You have Davante Adams. You have Renfrow, and to a lesser extent, Jacoby Meyers is making less than Renfrow, about maybe 75%. Or
Colton Miller
makes a lot of money. It's the side of the ball makes a ton of money, man, and it's a tough one. It definitely is a tough one. It's a tough one. What would you do? What would you like? Now, seeing those numbers, we talked about, I think what you said was, I think we both agreed on this. I'm not going to put it on you or me. We agreed on like 8 a year for 2 years. Right?
Yeah.
Seeing those numbers, do you, I know I soften my position a little bit. Do you soften your position a little bit?
No, because it's still not a matter of how good is he. It's what are you getting per dollar? And that still hasn't changed in my mind, right? What are you getting per dollar versus what you can get elsewhere? Still not a change. And again, all the other like the vast abundance of evidence is once you pay a running back and they're in their mid-20s and later, they don't get better with age. Like running back, like there's a real possibility we've seen the best that Josh Jacobs has of his career. It's a real possibility, right? Like you start getting to your late 20s, we see a lot of running backs slow down, especially with how Josh Jacobs plays. Now, he doesn't have as much wear and tear in college, right? Because he was wasn't even a starter in college, which is crazy to think with how good he is. But it makes me love him more. All it does is make it hurt more when we end up trading him. That's all it does. That's all it does. It doesn't make me want to keep him more. It doesn't make me want to pay him more. All it does is make it hurt more when like my feelings of love for Josh Jacobs, I'm trying to trump with the logic of I want to build a winning franchise and we only have so many resources.
I agree, man. I agree. Like I said before, and especially the resources that we have on that side of the ball already, the amount of money we spend on that side already. Tell them.
Of our 9 biggest cap hits next season, 7 of them are offense.
Yeah, man. It's It's not good. It's not okay. We need to be able to develop young players so that we have to pay them on the defensive side.
And the big defensive pay, Chandler Jones, was a drastic overpay. So even when we did pay a guy a lot, a $14 million,
Maxx and Chandler are the two guys making like any kind of money.
And the Chandler one was a waste, right? Like just not worth what was paid. So it's
I would love nothing more. I would love nothing more than to have to pay Divine Diablo and to have to pay Nate Hobbs because they freaking balled out.
Yeah,
because that's okay. Now you're kind of evening things out on both sides of the ball. You have players that are young, ascending, developing in your system, kind of maybe changing a little bit of the view of us now. We're able to develop more players on defense now, not just offensively. So I know, man, it's a tough thing, and it's one of those things where that's why a lot of teams do it poorly, because it's not easy building a franchise.
So I was on, I think it was last week. I think it was early this week. It's been a long week. It was early this week. I was on the local ESPN affiliate in Las Vegas because our two friends of the show, both been on the show. Steve Cofield's the host, and Ryan McKinnell was the co-host. Had them both on the show. And they're talking about Derek Carr. And this is what Ryan McKinnell had to say about what he wants out of Derek Carr in New Orleans.
Sure, but in all seriousness, I mean, accountability is everything, right? And that's the only way things are going to change. So if Carr does, go down to New Orleans, puts on 12 wins, then that is going to force the Raiders to take a harder look at themselves. And that is the only way things get better, is through accountability. And I very much, I would say, from the outside looking in, obviously I'm not on these shows all the time and speaking with the front office and speaking with the players like an Adam Hill or a Willie or a Steve, right? But the accountability and the lack thereof for me has been the story of the Raiders for years and years and years and years. So for me, I'm rooting for Derek Carr from that standpoint because I want to see Las Vegas get better. And accountability, again, I feel like is everything.
What do you make of Big Mac's statement?
I understand where he's coming from. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I understand what he's saying. I think that the accountability issue was something that was identified already. I think from Mark Davis's standpoint, that's why he brought in the new regime that he did bring in, who are big on accountability. So I don't see that Derek Carr doing good or poor or whatever he does with New Orleans is going to really change the direction of the ship.
I can't possibly agree with you more. Do you think Mark Davis gives a fuck what happens with the Saints? Do you think he cares?
I think, honestly, I think even more so than that, I don't think that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler care. I think they already have their vision.
I think what Ryan's talking about is, the last, and I edited out. This was just the last 45 seconds of the conversation.
He looks great, by the way. He's been losing weight.
He's getting there. He's getting there, man. He's getting there.
He didn't lose a lot. Good for him.
It's summertime. He's sweating the pounds away.
Yeah.
But this was more like the last few decades of problems, right? Which is not a Josh McDaniels or a John Gruden or a Derek Carr problem. It's, it's a Davis family problem. Right. And so I was looking at more at like the buck stops with Mark Davis, right? The accountability stops with him, right? He's the very top, right? And I don't think Mark Davis, I think deep down, he wants to see his Raiders do well. And I'm sure he'd be happy for Carr if he had a good season, like casually. But is he going to drastically alter his franchise based on Derek Carr's fucking passing percentage?
Yeah.
Quarterback rating? So. No, I don't. I think there's zero chance. I don't think if Derek Carr wins the Super Bowl or goes 0-17, I don't think Mark Davis looks at that at all and says, I'm going to adjust what I'm doing at my franchise because of how my ex-quarterback performed in the Bayou. No, I think fans will talk that way. I think we're going to see major overreaction one way or the other based on how Derek Carr performs next season. I think fans will be that way. I think we'll have that conversation. Our comment sections will be full, and it might be fun having those conversations, or it's going to suck. I don't know. fans will feel that way. I don't think the one person who matters most and is the decision maker, I could be wrong, but I don't think Mark Davis cares. I think Mark Davis's head is in the sand of the desert, and that's where it stays.
I wouldn't necessarily say his head's in the sand. I think that he understands that the lack of patience that he's had in the past has hurt him, and he's seen how the lack of patience towards the end that his father had hurt the team at that time as well, towards the end, right? Mm-hmm. And if he's seen the error of his ways, and if he's seen the error of how being impatient can uproot a franchise over and over and over again, right? He's already has the plan set in place. Regardless of what happens outside, if we take care of what we have to take care of, then we're going to be better. Then we're going to move in the right direction.
Let's put it this way. Whether Carr wins the Super Bowl or goes 0-17, that has less effect on Mark Davis's decision-making on if the Raiders win 8 games or 9. That's my point. Like, the tiniest little improvements or, falters that the Raiders do are 100 times more important in Mark Davis's mind than whatever Derek Carr does in New Orleans. That is how I've seen Mark Davis wired over the course of his ownership. He runs a mom and pop shop. We talk about it all the time, right? He grew up in this franchise. It's not like he worked at 7 other franchises and see how everyone else works and sees the moving parts of everywhere and has a worldly view of the NFL. He just played one place. He's been in, the only time he ever moves is when his franchise moves, right? That's the only time he's everywhere in any other buildings is when they get new ones, right? Mm-hmm. He's focused on what's happening in Las Vegas. Everything else is a drastic million miles behind them step backward in his mind.
Yeah. And one thing that we haven't really discussed, and I mean, we don't really discuss this topic a lot as far as like Mark Davis and his ownership style, but who's Mark Davis's biggest like mentor ownership wise? It's Jerry Jones.
Dad? Yeah.
It's just living is Jerry Jones. And Jerry Jones is probably one of the more like has more control of his franchise than a mom and pop Mark Davis has, because he actually picks the players too. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if that's who's getting a lot of advice from, and that's who he has stuff to bounce off as another owner. From what we've heard, it's Jerry Jones, a guy who he's able to come to and talk to about certain things. I don't see him making a 180 like he's done a lot in the past. With his strategy and with his direction.
Producing what at Windbags?
Sure, why not?
Rory. JP5. Is that our Rory?
That's our Rory.
I actually agree with Soto. Once a Raider, always a Raider, but I don't give a fuck about them while playing for another team until retired. So we had this conversation about what like makes a Raider. And look, we made it pretty black and white when we were yelling at each other. I think we can all agree there's a special place in your heart for someone who's played one snap in the silver and black. And I think there's a much bigger place in their heart when they've played a long, long time and played really, really awesome for us. And, I think it's not quite that black and white, right? Mm-hmm. My point being is that what you've contributed affects how much I like you, right? It's not just like, Tim Brown and Alex Leatherwood. We love them the same because they're both equal Raiders. Like, no, like there's a hierarchy that you earn. And 2, whilst I'm not openly rooting for ex-Raiders still playing in the NFL, when I see him do well, I feel like, oh, good. I'm glad that guy's doing well. I'm glad a guy that I've spent however many years and seasons rooting for is finding success, as long as you're not playing the Raiders. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
you can divorce yourself from them emotionally. That's fine. Like I'm not saying you're wrong. You're like, look, yeah, fuck,
I don't.
Whoever, I don't care.
And it's not like I hate them. As much as I hate the Chiefs, I didn't hate Marcus Allen when he signed with the Chiefs. I mean, it's in some cases it's even worse. It's like I don't care. That's the real revenge on somebody is not hating them because you're still giving them emotion. It's just not caring about them. And once they don't play for the team anymore, I don't wish them to do poorly. I don't wish them to get injured or any of that stuff. I just don't care. I don't care about when Khalil Mack got traded to the Bears. Whatever. I didn't care. Okay, whatever. I mean, I cared that he got traded, but I didn't care how he did when he was there.
I looked at it this way. The example I gave on Twitter was let's say we trade Josh Jacobs to the Bills, and the Bills play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, and it's overtime, and Josh Jacobs gets the winning touchdown, knocking the Chiefs out of the playoffs. I would feel a little bit more warmth in my heart that it was our Josh Jacobs that knocked the Chiefs out than a stranger, another non-Raider. Not that I'm rooting for him, but ooh, that feels a little extra nice that the Queefs got knocked out by a guy that has a Raiders emblem tattoo on his body.
I don't think I can be any more joyous than watching the Chiefs get knocked out of the playoffs.
You've reached peak.
When it happens, and that's it.
She's I could be getting a blowjob on a roller coaster while watching the Chiefs get knocked out of the playoffs, and it's the same emotion. I just can't.
It's just there's always got to be a limit.
Right. Beat Gordo, 7905. Josh Jacobs deserves at least $12 million a year. We need to pay him. Carr, lucky he had him because he sucked more before him, and he's been consistent these past 4 years, way more than Saquon. I'm curious how he came up with that number. 12 mil a year.
I mean, 12 mil is what the highest paid, right? Around 12 million is what they're getting paid. Not the rookie contract, but
the rookie deal's 14, isn't it?
It's 13 and change. Yeah.
High 13.
Yeah. I think it's 12.5 is what McCaffrey's making this year, right?
Well, I mean, if it were any other position, think about this. If Josh Jacobs was playing any other position and he was the leading producer at his position in a contract year, he'd be the highest paid player at that position. If he were a defensive tackle or a wide receiver or a kicker or a linebacker, if you were the number one producer at that position, and it's your second contract, right? You're young, you're just turned 25, you'd be the highest paid player at that position, most likely.
Yeah.
So it's I get the confusion and I get the anger. You're he's the best. He should be paid the most. Basic economics. It's well, there's a layer deeper to that.
And again, look, I don't. I hope everyone understands when I say this. I don't think, and I'm not going to speak for you, but for as far as I go, I don't not want him to get paid. I think that the way the NFL is going, it's not going to happen. That's what I feel. I hope he gets his money. I hope we figure out a way to give him what he wants without crippling our franchise.
And this isn't a Raider issue. We made Darren.
Yeah, this is an NFL issue. This is a football issue.
We made Maxx Crosby this third at the time, the third highest at his highest paid at his position, I believe. Darren Waller number 1 at his position. We made Hunter Renfrow number 3
or 4 in slot receivers,
right? We've paid motherfuckers. It's not the Raiders. We're showing that if you work your ass off and produce, the Raiders won't pay you. No, we've paid.
Davante was the highest paid freaking receiver.
We've overpaid more than underpaid. Chandler Jones
for 45 minutes. Carr was the highest paid quarterback. We've paid
a cup of coffee
players.
Raiders are more often overpaying than underpaying players that have earned it.
Remember that Stanford route contract? God damn.
Yeah, man.
Did we overpay?
Last one, Shima Utah, 86. Sounds like Cherokee. We no longer have Skip and Shannon arguing, so you guys will suffice. Grabs popcorn.
Yeah.
I think I think what makes this work is that we've known each other for so long that we can push the buttons, and then when the show's over, it's just like, show's over, right?
Over. Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
I don't think people realize like the scope of our relationship. Like when you share experiences like almost getting your limbs broken and like getting your like blood circulation cut off to your brain.
When you train martial arts with somebody,
it's different. You like that locker room type of environment thing that you have. It's weird. It's a different type of thing. Plus, we bonded over like Raiders and a bunch of other things. We have a lot of mutual friends. We like to hang out. Like we genuinely like. I helped you move into your freaking house. I hate moving people. I hate it. And I said, you know what? He freaking asked me to do it, and I'm going to fucking do it. And I was the first person there, and I was the last person to leave. So this, like, there's very few things that anyone can really say to me once I really consider them a close friend of mine that will make me, like, just get super, super, super angry that I'll take it with me for a long time. But when we're talking about the Raiders, this is just like, okay, we agree, we disagree. Okay, let's just hash it out. I'm gonna defend my point because I'm passionate about it. You're gonna defend your point because you're passionate about it, and then that's it. Once we talk about a different subject, we don't normally carry that onto it. Even forget the different show, a different subject in the same show.
When you share blood, sweat, and tears makes a pretty good lubricant. So that kind of helps. And two, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I have the highest respect for Soto as a broadcaster and no respect for him as a man.
It's true.
Which is why we make this work, right? You can't over-respect. I say it all the time. We'll leave you with that. Day late, little shorter, but we made it short and sweet. We'll keep an eye on the Josh Jacobs situation. Like I said, less than a month away from training camp. Free agency still technically underway. Some improvements can still be had. We'll let you know.
Who's the first domino to fall in the running back market, man? Yep. There's a lot of guys out there that can get paid. There's the 3 franchise tag guys. There's Cook out there. Jonathan Taylor's eligible to get paid. I mean, there's
injury news to follow, right? Jimmy G Spud, our first round rookie.
Tyree Wilson,
Still gotta get. So busy off season, right? Very busy off season. Until then, not going wood if you're with me. Hey, you made it to the end of our video. Great job. I know you want more. Go ahead and click the next video. And if you're feeling crazy, go ahead and subscribe.